Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 8 and today we will explain about verbal communication. So the first presentation will be presented by me. Okay, and let's go to the first material. Okay, humans are social creatures. They can only live and develop and act as humans by relating and cooperating with other humans. One of the most important ways to relate and work with people is communication. So communication is one of the most important aspects of human life. Humans are very important by the communication that occur with other humans, both knowns and unknowns. Communication has a very vital role for human life. Therefore, we must pay careful attention to communication. Verbal and non-verbal communication are essential, interrelated, and complementary. In direct communication, we are constantly sending messages to the person we are talking to. Non-verbal communication often happens automatically and without our control. For example, when we are angry or happy, we tend to speak louder and faster. This happens because we experience emotional changes. And nonverbal communication also complement our verbal communication. When we say one things, if our body movement don't support it, people wouldn't believe it. For example, we have done our homework, but with a downfall tone, our friend will certainly not believe it. Okay. And in a summary, the most brilliant similarity between both these ways of communication is that they both deal with transferring and receiving information. In addition to that, none of them, verbal and non-verbal communication, are not connected to the brain. It therefore indicate that in both situations, it is the perceptual processing that resolves the amount of information that the brain receives for further thought. Verbal communication, however, requires that notification is well sent for that to be the communication. For instance, or a communication that both visual and hearing. This is because hearing in this case is accomplished by viewing hands. The brain understands well. Okay, that's all about my presentation about my material. So the next material will be presented by Lutfia.
Okay, the next material is about differences between verbal and nonverbal communication. There are four fundamental differences between verbal and nonverbal communication. The first difference between verbal and nonverbal communication is that we use a single channel or words when we communicate verbally versus multiple channels when we communicate non-verbally. Try this exercise. Say your first and last name at the same time. You quickly find that this is an impossible task. Now, pat the top of your head with your right hand and wave with your left hand. Smile, strike your shoulders, and chew gum at the same time. While giving an upward, our ability to do this demonstrates how we use multiple nonverbal channels simultaneously to communicate. The second difference between verbal and nonverbal communication is that verbal communication is distant or linear, while nonverbal communication is continuous or in constant motion and relative to context. Distinct means that messages have a clear beginning and end, and are expressed in a linear fashion. We begin and end words and sentences in a linear way to make it easier for others to follow and understand. If you pronounce the word cat, you begin with the letter C and process to finish with T. Continuous means that messages are ongoing and work in relation to other nonverbal and verbal cues. Think about the difference between analog and digital clocks. The analog clocks represents nonverbal communication in that we generate meaning by considering the relationship of the different arms to each another or context. Also, the clock's arms are in continuous motion. We notice the speed of their movement, their position in the circle and to each other, and their relationship with the environment. Okay, the third difference between verbal and nonverbal communication is that we use verbal communication consciously while we generally use nonverbal communication unconsciously. Conscious communication means that we think about our verbal communication before we communicate. Unconscious communication means that we don't think about every nonverbal message we communicate. If you ever heard the statement as a child, think before you speak, you were being told a fundamental principle of verbal communication. Realistically, it's nearly impossible not to think before we speak. When we speak, we do so consciously and intently. In contrast, when something funny happens, you probably don't think, okay, I'm going to smile and laugh right now. Instead, you react enthusiastically, displaying your emotion through these nonverbal behaviors. Nonverbal communication can occur as unconscious reaction to situation. We are not claiming that all nonverbal communication is unconscious. At times, we certainly make conscious choices to use or withhold nonverbal communication to share meaning. Angry drivers use many conscious nonverbal expressions to communicate to other drivers. In a job interview, you are making conscious decision about your wardrobe, posture, and eye contact. The fourth difference between verbal and nonverbal communication is that some nonverbal communication is universal. Verbal communication is exclusive to the users of a particular language dialect, whereas some nonverbal communication is recognized across cultures. Although cultures must certainly have particular meanings and use for nonverbal communication, there are universal nonverbal behaviors that almost everyone recognizes. For instance, people around the world recognize and use expressions such as smile, frowns, and the pointing of a finger at an object. Not all nonverbal gestures are universal. For example, if you travel to different regions of the world, find out what is appropriate. For example, if you go to South Korea, don't overpayment with only one hand.
Okay, now nonverbal communication and culture. Type of nonverbal communication vary based on culture and country, but the areas of differences tend to fall within the following 8 areas. Each provides an area where people doing business in other part of the world should understand two nonverbal communication differences between culture and how to prepare for them. 1. Eye contact. Eye contact signals confidence in the West, but can be seen as a root of challenging in part of Asia and the Middle East. 2. Touch. Touch often is used frequently in communication, even in a business setting with customs such as the handshake, but other cultures consider touching over other people inappropriate. 3. Gesture. Many business people who work internationally describe line themselves to keep hand gesture to a minimum, as they are the bit of a minefield. For example, pointing at someone else is an insult in most part of the world. But in some places it is often used simply as a references for physical distance. The rule of thumb here, no matter where you are in the world, is to give people more space than you think they may need. Only get close in infinite people in different culture view physical distance differently. However, it's best to never enter anyone personal space about 2 feet. It is if it is not personal intimacy. Many people find such proximity uncomfortable. 5. Facial expression. The good news is the facial expression for happiness, sadness, anger, and fear are universal. The bad news is that not every culture is okay with using them in a business setting. 6. Appearances. Conserve Conservative attire is the safest bet. Some places in the United States are fine with very relaxed appearances, while others see even an exposed shoulder or leg as a causes for others. 7. Posture. Again, the traditional route is the best route. Don't slouch when sitting or sit with legs crossed. Face people as they speak to you and not enough to show you are paying attention to what they say. Uh, 8. Paralanguage. Paralanguage refers to communication that is focalized but not words. This includes a tone of voice, loudness, speed of speech, and inflection. Paralanguage is key to understanding the context or meaning of the word used. It's important to be mindful of these issues and understand they are not discernible in emails and texts. So great card must be used in the word you choose. Okay, thank you.